The last voyage of Ironfang Isle. The sea roared around the Tempest, a vessel of iron and timber, as it cut through the dark waters toward Ironfang Isle. Captain Cedric Stormhand Kane, a seasoned sailor with a reputation as fierce as the ocean itself, stood at the helm, his grizzled beard whipping in the wind. Beside him were his loyal crew: Alaric the mapmaker, Jorund the cook, Baldwin the first mate, and Elias, a young deckhand eager to prove his worth. Each man had a reason for embarking on this perilous journey, and each carried a past he'd rather leave forgotten. Their destination, Ironfang Isle, was a place spoken of in whispers in every coastal town. A jagged speck of land known for its rugged terrain, treacherous reefs, and, most of all, the fabled Ironfang treasure, a bounty said to be so vast that no man could carry it alone. But the treasure was guarded by something far darker than mere danger. No one who set foot on Ironfang Isle had ever returned. It had taken Cedric 5 years to assemble the map leading to Ironfang, piecing it together from stolen artifacts, old sea charts, and tales from retired seamen. Now, as the isle's silhouette appeared on the horizon, a thrill ran through the men. They were closer than anyone had ever dared to dream. "Captain," Baldwin called, his voice steady despite the raging wind. "Are you certain about this? Some say the isle itself is cursed." Cedric's eyes flashed with determination. "Cursed or not, Baldwin, we'll be the ones to return, with enough gold to turn the tides of any curse." As the ship approached the shore, the crew braced themselves. Alaric unfurled a map, its edges worn and corners faded. "This is where the markings say we'll find a cove," he murmured, tracing his finger along the coastline. "From there, we'll move inland." They anchored in a narrow inlet sheltered from the worst of the waves and disembarked, each man's heart pounding with the thrill of the unknown. The shore was eerie, littered with sharp stones and bones of strange sea creatures washed up from storms long past. In the distance, a mountainous ridge stretched across the isle, shrouded in mist. "Remember the plan," Cedric said, his voice low. "We stick together. No wandering off and no greed. If this treasure's real, there's more than enough for all of us." The crew set off, navigating through dense underbrush and towering cliffs, each step heavy with the weight of anticipation. The jungle was alive with sounds: strange bird calls, rustling leaves, and an occasional growl from an unseen creature. As they ventured deeper, Elias whispered, "Why do you think no one's ever come back?" "Maybe the treasure's guarded," Jorund muttered, pulling his coat tighter around his shoulders, "by something more than just curses." They pressed on, each man keeping a hand close to his weapon. Finally, they reached a clearing where a cave yawned in the mountainside. Its entrance was lined with twisted roots and covered in moss that seemed to pulse with an unnatural glow. "This must be it," Alaric said, consulting his map. "The heart of the isle. The treasure should be inside." "Stay alert," Cedric ordered, drawing his sword. They entered the cave single file, torches casting flickering shadows along the damp stone walls. The air was thick with the scent of earth and something else, something metallic and old. The passage twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the bowels of the isle. Strange carvings adorned the walls, depicting men kneeling before an enormous serpent. The men exchanged uneasy glances but continued forward. Suddenly, the ground gave way beneath Jorund's feet. With a shout, he fell, his torch spinning out of reach. Elias and Baldwin reached down, grabbing him just in time to keep him from tumbling into the darkness below. "Watch your step," Cedric warned, pulling Jorund to safety. The crew moved with greater caution, sidestepping pits and avoiding loose stones. After what felt like hours, they emerged into a vast chamber, illuminated by a shaft of light from above. In the center of the chamber lay a pile of gold, silver, and gems unlike any they'd ever seen. The men's eyes widened in awe. Coins, jewels, relics, and weapons, all scattered in a treasure trove that glinted and shimmered. Alaric knelt to examine a piece, a gold medallion engraved with symbols he didn't recognize. "It's real," he breathed. "This isn't just treasure. These are artifacts from civilizations long lost to time." But as his fingers brushed the medallion, a low hiss echoed through the chamber. The men froze, scanning the shadows. From the darkness emerged a massive serpent, its scales the color of molten silver, eyes glinting with a malevolent intelligence. It coiled around the treasure, watching them with unblinking eyes. "The Guardian," Cedric whispered, his grip tightening on his sword. Baldwin cursed under his breath. "Didn't think we'd be facing a creature straight out of a nightmare." The serpent lunged, its fangs bared. The men scattered, barely dodging its strike. Cedric slashed at it with his sword, but the blade glanced off its scales. Alaric hurled a torch at it, the flames dancing across its body, but the serpent merely hissed, undeterred. "Spread out," Cedric shouted. "Aim for the eyes." The crew fought valiantly, each man finding his courage in the face of the monstrous creature. Baldwin swung his axe, striking its side, while Elias darted in with his dagger, aiming for a softer spot near its jaw. But the serpent was relentless, its movements quick and deadly. As the battle raged, Jorund noticed something, a pattern of stones inlaid in the floor. He realized it was a mosaic depicting a serpent coiled around a key. "Captain, the floor, it's a map," Jorund shouted. "There's something beneath it. A key, maybe a way to stop this beast." While the serpent focused on the others, Cedric dashed to the mosaic. He pried up one of the stones, revealing a hollow beneath. Inside lay a small, ornate dagger, its blade inscribed with runes. Cedric took the dagger and turned to face the serpent. "This is what you're guarding, isn't it?" he muttered. He moved toward the beast, holding the dagger high. "Let's see how you handle this." With a roar, he plunged the dagger into the creature's neck. The serpent writhed, letting out a shriek that reverberated through the chamber. Its body convulsed, scales cracking and crumbling. In a final, shuddering movement, the serpent collapsed, its life draining away. The crew stood in stunned silence as the serpent's body disintegrated into dust, revealing the treasure hoard in its entirety. Cedric took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving the dagger. "Looks like we've earned our prize," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. The men gathered the treasure, filling their packs with as much as they could carry. As they left the chamber, they each felt a weight lift, a sense that they had defied death and come out the other side. Returning to the shore, they loaded the treasure onto the Tempest and set sail, leaving Ironfang Isle behind as a faint shadow on the horizon. The crew felt a sense of accomplishment, their bond forged in the fire of their shared ordeal. As the isle vanished from sight, Cedric glanced at the dagger, still in his hand, and smiled. "Here's to the adventure that brought us fortune," he said, raising the dagger in a silent toast. And though they would never return to Ironfang Isle, the men knew that their lives, and their legends, would live on, carried by the waves of the sea and the songs of sailors yet to come. As the Tempest sailed away from Ironfang Isle, the crew felt a strange calm settle over the ship. The night was quiet, with only the gentle splash of waves against the hull breaking the silence. The treasure lay secured in the hold, glittering faintly in the dim lantern light. Each man sat with his thoughts, their minds still haunted by the vision of the great serpent and the perilous journey through the heart of the isle. Cedric stood at the bow, looking out over the vast ocean. He still held the ornate dagger, the relic he had used to slay the Guardian. The blade was intricate, with runes that seemed to pulse faintly under the moonlight, as if still imbued with some ancient power. Baldwin approached, his voice low. "Captain, do you think we're truly free of that place?" Cedric considered the question, his eyes narrowing. "It's hard to say, Baldwin. We took something precious, something meant to stay buried. That kind of act doesn't go without consequence." As if in response to his words, the ship gave a sudden shudder, causing the men to grip the railings to steady themselves. The wind picked up, colder than before, with a faint scent of brine and decay. A shadow passed beneath the water, so large and so swift that they barely had time to process it. "Did anyone else feel that?" Elias asked, his voice barely a whisper. From the depths below, a faint glow appeared, illuminating the waves with an eerie, greenish light. The men exchanged fearful glances as the light grew brighter, circling the tempest as if sizing it up. And then they heard it, a distant, haunting call, like a rumble from the depths of the ocean. The water around them began to churn, the waves rising and falling with an unnatural rhythm. The glow intensified, casting shadows across the deck, and suddenly a voice, deep, ancient, and filled with unyielding wrath, echoed around them. "You have taken what is mine." The voice filled the men with dread, resonating with a power that seemed to shake the very air. The crew gathered around Cedric, their eyes wide with fear. "What do we do, Captain?" Alaric asked, gripping his sword tightly. Cedric looked down at the dagger, its runes now glowing brighter than ever, almost burning in his hand. He knew then that the blade had bound them to something far greater, a force that would not rest until it reclaimed what was stolen. With a grim expression, Cedric lifted the dagger over the side of the ship, holding it above the churning waters. "Return to the depths," he shouted. "You have your guardian. Release us." But the voice only laughed, a sound like thunder rolling over the waves. "The treasure is marked by blood. You cannot escape its curse." The water surged, and a massive shadow emerged, a shape indistinct but colossal, something that seemed part of the sea itself. As it loomed above them, Cedric knew they were facing the true wrath of the Isle. They had disturbed forces far older than the treasure or even the guardian serpent. In one final act of defiance, Cedric threw the dagger into the depths, where it disappeared with a hiss and a flash of light. The glow faded, the waves calmed, and the ancient voice fell silent. The men held their breath, the silence stretching out until finally the sea returned to its natural rhythm. Baldwin let out a relieved sigh, and Elias crossed himself, muttering thanks for their lives. Cedric looked around, meeting the eyes of his men. "We leave that island behind us, and we do not speak of this to anyone. Let the treasure buy us peace and silence. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button and subscribe for part 2.